Hello and welcome back to yet another class. We'll be starting discussion on the third unit, which is going to talk. In this unit, we are going to discuss the structure of our Indian political system. That we have divided into two components. One is Indian federalism, in which we will briefly also discuss the concept of what is cooperative federalism. And then we will talk about the local government that is divided into the urban government and the rural government. Okay, so we will try to understand the federal structure and the local governance at the within a state. How are we ruling ourselves? The local governance, the urban local governance, that is the municipalities and the other local bodies, and at the rural level, we'll talk about the gram sabhas and the panchayats and the zilla parishad, etc. So let's start with our discussion on the Indian federal system, because the first part of our structure of political system, the first part of structure of political system is Indian federalism. So here I will again share the PPT. First and foremost, we will try to understand what is meant by federalism. Now, indeed, we discussed this briefly when we were discussing the first unit, in which we were talking about the features of Indian Constitution. And if you remember, quite in detail, we had discussed one of the very prominent features of Indian Constitution, that it is a federation with a unitary bias. Okay, so here we will try to understand what is a federation and what is federalism. Now, as you can see on your screen, federalism is a form of government in which the power of the government is divided between the center and the state. So that means you have one central government which has authority over the entire territory of that nation. And then the territory of the nation is divided into federating units, or what we call states. And each state or each federating unit has its own government. The point to be noted is that this is based on a mutual and voluntary agreement. That means the central government accepts the existence and sharing of power with the state governments, and the state governments accept the existence of the central government as the central authority and sharing of power with the center. Now, to what extent these powers will be shared between the center and the state depend on a number of factors, which we will discuss in the next slide. So, what is a federation? Very simple. A federation is a system where there is a dual government, or there are two sets of government. One, the central government, and the other is the state government. And this is called a federation or a federal state. Please understand, the central government has authority over the entire territory, whereas the state governments have authority only over the territory of that particular state or that particular federating unit. Now, as I said, what decides the division of power between the center and the state? The fundamental factor which influences the division of power between the center and the state, and thereby it determines whether the center will be strong or whether the states will enjoy more autonomy. It is divided by which method of forming the federal government has been followed. Now, there are two methods, centripetal method and centrifugal method. The centripetal method is the method which was followed by USA, whereby it's like you have, the states which are outside, they are different They are independent of each other, and then they come closer, they surrender some of their powers to the center, and they form the federation. Just to explain this for your understanding, that uh, when the United States of America was formed, these were 13 independent countries. Okay. And these countries, which were obviously in closer vicinity with each other, they were colonized by the foreign powers. And they realized that why are we getting colonized by the others? Because we are smaller powers. And individually, we are not able to fight against the colonizer. And therefore, these 13 countries, they decided that, okay, let us come together. All 13 of us will come together. We will surrender some of our powers to the center, and we will create a central government. And thus, these 13 countries decided to adjust a bit with each other and create a new country. Therefore, it is called United States of America. These were different independent states. Okay. So what did they do? They said, we will keep only defense, foreign affairs, currency. Okay. We will keep that in common. Rest, all of us are going to have our own constitutions. We will have our own system of governance. We will have our own set of do's and don'ts and our own rules of citizenships. Okay. So thus, these 13 countries, they surrendered some power in the center, and they had that historical convention in 1774. They organized a meeting of all these 13 countries. And in the Philadelphia, it was organized in Philadelphia, which is popularly known as the Philadelphia Convention. So in Philadelphia Convention, the representatives of all these 13 states, they met and they agreed to form the United States of America. I may have mentioned this earlier that, when we talk about the Constitution of India being a very bulky document compared to maybe the Constitution of USA. I don't know how many of you are aware, but the Constitution of United States of America is merely 1,000 words and 17 pages. Now, the question arises that a country which is a superpower, which is around 200 years old, okay, how is it having such a small, such a short, such a brief constitution? The answer lies in the fact that because these were 13 nations which came together, okay, they decided that we will have a small basic set of rules which will come from the center, and yes, each state has its own constitution. Okay, so thus they followed a system which is called a centripetal system, whereby the states from outside, they came together, they surrendered some of their powers, they gave it to the center, and thus they enjoy more autonomy. They are more independent because obviously they were independent nations and they did not want to compromise on that. As opposed to that, we have another system which is called the centrifugal system. And India was formed, Indian Federation was formed following the centrifugal system. Now, what is the centrifugal system? Centrifugal system is where you already have a state, which is then divided into different fixed territories, and the power flows from the center to the states. In the previous center, from the states, the power came to the center. In the centrifugal system, from the center, the power flows out to the states or to the federating units. So how did India work it out? India created the Union of States. Okay. It created a nation. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it consisted of the princely states, the former princely states, and the British administered territories. All of that put together was created as India as a nation with a strong central government And then this central government gave powers to the state governments. Okay, the center gave powers to the federating. So thus, when we discuss the Indian Federation, it is a federation with a very strong central government. And that's the reason why India is also called a quasi-federal state, a semi-federal state, not fully federal. Why? Because we have a strong central government. Now, I think we've discussed this earlier, but just quickly to remind you, why do we need a strong central government? For the simple reason, because we are a huge country with so much of diversity. And on one hand, diversity is beautiful. It gives you so many varieties. But when you talk about diversity, sometimes, your linguistic identity, your cultural identity, your racial identity, your identity of that particular geography, it sometimes, starts becoming so prominent that your identity as an Indian may take a backseat. So something like this should not happen, and India should remain as a united, one single integrated sovereign territory. It's for that reason that we have a strong central government. Now, the federal form of government of India, just the opening statement of Article 1, Clause 1 gives us the idea. What does it say? Article 1, Clause 1 states that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Okay, I think I have discussed this earlier, that it doesn't say Bharat is a federation of states. Okay, it says it is a union of states. So why are we emphasizing on that point that it is a union of states? Because we want to emphasize on the factor that it is one united whole, a single nation. Article 1, Clause 2 states that the states and territories will be specified in the first schedule. Such other territories as may be acquired. Okay, so that means what is the territory of the states, of the federating states, is then described in Schedule 1. So the opening statement is that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. And that's the reason why I said that India is also called a quasi-federalism. Okay. Now, let's try to understand that what are the features of this quasi-federal structure, or what are the federal features of Indian Constitution. Now, this we have discussed earlier when we talked about India being a federation with a unitary bias. So we emphasize at that time on the factors which are making India a country, a federation with a unitary bias. But now we will talk about the factors which are highlighting the federal character of our constitution. First and foremost, and most importantly, we have a dual set of government, two governments. We have a government in the center, that is a central government, or what we call the Union of India, having its authority over the entire territory of India. And then we have the state governments, which have some level of autonomy. They enjoy some freedom, some power, but they are under the authority of the central government. Okay, so we have a dual government, and that is one of the most important feature of any federation. Next important feature is division of power between the center and the states at different levels. Okay, so the powers are very clearly defined and divided between the center and the state. And in fact, that has been one of the reasons why the Constitution has become a big bulky book. We knew that we are creating a federation, and if you do not clearly divide the powers between the center and the state, then there will be constant conflicts between the two. So we have divided powers between center and state at different levels, at various levels, not only at the lawmaking level, but at different levels. Thirdly, very importantly, we have a written constitution. And because we have a written constitution, we are able to protect and maintain the federal character of our country. Okay, because a written constitution is difficult to amend from time to time. Frequent amendments in a written constitution are not possible. Okay, I mean, imagine we are more than 75 years old now, and our constitution has been amended, what, 103 times, right? So that's a very good score considering the size of our population, considering the diversity of our country. We are doing considerably very well. Okay. The fourth feature, supremacy of the constitution. This we have discussed already, that in India, the supreme authority is the Constitution of India. There is nothing above the Constitution. So the supreme authority remains the Constitution. The union government, the state governments, the three organs of the government, everything is under the Constitution. The fifth feature, rigidity of the Constitution. As I said, that because we are a written Constitution, we also are a rigid Constitution. Fortunately, not an extremely rigid constitution. We have kind of maintained a balance between rigidity and flexibility that we have already discussed. But this rigidity component has, in a way, protected our states and the autonomy of the states. Okay. Then bicameralism. That's another important feature. Bicameralism means having two houses. Remember the two houses, Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha is the House of Representatives of the people who are directly elected by you and I. And then you have the Rajya Sabha, the Council of States. Where do the representatives in the Council of States come? Where are the representatives of the Rajya Sabha coming from? Please remember, we don't directly elect them. So then who elects them? The state legislative assemblies. They elect the representatives of their state to be sent to the Rajya Sabha. So that's what have we done in the bicameral legislature. We are representing the people and we have representation for the states as well. Now, these are the federal features. When you talk about the unitary features, we have discussed this very much at length in great details. We have single citizenship. Then the states do not have the right to territorial integrity. That means the size of the state, the territory of the state can be changed by the center. Okay, so the center can divide one state into three. It can pick up two states, merge it into one. Okay, it can redraw the boundaries of a particular state. It can change the names of the states. So definitely the center has more powers than the state as federating units. Then the emergency provisions. This we have already declared in detail that during an emergency, the country, if it is national emergency, then we are getting converted into a unitary form, because then there is only one government, that is the center. All the administration is run in the name of the President of India. Okay, and if a particular state is, doesn't have a state government, that means the government maybe the government has lost a majority, or no party got a majority when the election in that particular state was held, and it results into president's rule, that is the rule by the center. Okay. Another thing, that the Rajya Sabha may pass a resolution and take over an item from the state list. That also we have discussed at length. Integrated All India Services, all our IAS, IFS, IAS officers, IPS officers, they come from the center. So your police services, your administrative services, the forest services, revenue, income tax, all these services are centralized and they come from the center. They get transferred from one state to another, and it is an integrated All India services system. We have an integrated judiciary. This again we have discussed, that we have an integrated judiciary and the judiciary is in hierarchy. Right on top, we have the Supreme Court of India, which has authority over the entire territory of India, followed by the high courts of each state. Now, these high courts have authority in the respective state. And in the state, high court becomes the highest judicial body. Below the high court, then we have the other courts. We have the sessions court, then we have the magistrates court and the city civil court and the small causes court. Then there is an entire hierarchy. But we have an integrated judiciary. That means each court is accountable to the superior court, and that accountability goes right up to the Supreme Court. Okay. Then we have an integrated machinery for elections, for audits and accounts. This also we have discussed earlier. We follow a list system. We have a union list, state list, concurrent list. Union list has maximum items or topics or subjects on which the parliament makes laws, then followed by state list. It originally had 66 and now it has 61 items, subjects on which each state can make laws. Then we have the concurrent list. Please remember, both center and state can make laws on concurrent lists, but if a law is made by the state and then the center makes a law, then the law made by the union, by the center prevails. And the residuary powers, all the residuary powers are directly given to the center. It goes to the union. So it makes the union more powerful. It is interesting that each state is headed by a governor. And the governor of the state is appointed through the president. Okay. I mean, he is appointed by the president of India. Now, the president of India doesn't decide who will be the governor of which state. So who decides? The central government decides. And the central government then gets the appointments done through the president. And what happens? The outcome is that the center exercises control over the states through the governors, because the governor is not answerable to the states. Governor is superior, is an higher authority than the state government. The state government is under the authority of the governor, and this governor is under the authority of the president. Okay, and he's appointed, he's the choice, he's a selection of the central government. So that means indirectly also the center can control or try to control the state. Now, the governor is empowered to reserve certain types of bills which are passed by the state legislature. Suppose the Vidhan Sabha of Maharashtra has passed a particular bill. Okay, just like in the center, the bills passed by the parliament must be signed by the president. Similarly, a bill which is passed by the state legislature must be signed by the governor of the state. Now, if the governor is not very sure about the content of the bill, he may think that the state is going overboard, it is crossing the line, or the bill is not exactly in sync with the constitutional provision. If he is in doubt, what will he do? He will save the bill to be considered by the president. Okay, and please remember, the president enjoys the veto power. Veto power means the president can, decide the fate of the bill, and that decision is final. Okay, now, when we talk about these features, these provisions, please understand that all of them are giving an upper hand to the center. So the question arises that if the center is so strong and powerful, then why did we create the state government? We could have had a unitary form of government, only the central government enjoying all the powers. Would be no conflict, no tug of war between the center and the state. But please understand, why was it essential to form a federation? Because look at our country. We have a very huge size, okay, a large territory, and larger population occupying that territory. Okay, we are big in size as far as territory is concerned. We are very big in size as far as the population is concerned. Now, this population is not homogeneous in the sense, I mean, obviously we all are Indians and we are one, but we speak so many different languages. Okay, each state has its own different language, and then those languages are further divided into so many dialects. We have thousands of dialects, right? Then each region has its own peculiar tradition, its own peculiar culture, its own peculiar way of dressing up. So we may be worshipping the same gods and goddesses. We may be worshipping the same Ram, Krishna, or same Allah, or same Jesus, or same Buddha, or same Mahavir. But when you look at the practices or the tradition within the state, they're different from each other. Okay. Then, depending upon the geography, the climate, our dressing is different, our requirements are different, our food habits are different. So there is so much of diversity. Now, to maintain that diversity, to protect that diversity, but to keep it unified, the only system that was feasible was creating a network of different governments and all of them finally assembling, meeting at the center. See, because such a huge territory and such a huge population, the central government alone cannot manage it. Okay, you need to have state governments. And mind you, the state governments are then further divided into different districts. Okay, each district has its own local governance. Then the district is further divided into blocks. And then each block is further divided either into municipalities, in urban areas, or in gram sabhas, in rural areas. So do you understand the network, the web of different administrative levels? And all of it finally assimilates into the central government. And that's the reason why it was important to create India as a federation, as a federal form of government. Okay. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the tug of war between the center and the state. Please understand that the states depend upon the grants and aid, which is given from the center, the financial aid which is given from the center to the states. Okay. So they depend on the money which comes from the center. All right. But they want more and more and more freedom from the center. They don't like center, controlling them, making them accountable, having common systems. And that creates kind of a rift between the center and the state. Not only does it create a rift between the center and the state, it creates a rift sometimes between the states also. Okay. So you need to understand it like this. When we decided that we are going to write our constitution, so two things which were very clear. One, that we are going to be a parliamentary democracy, and the three organs of the government, that is the legislature, executive, and judiciary. We are going to divide powers between the three organs of the government. So we will follow a system of separation of powers along with a system of checks and balances. Now, I don't think I discussed this earlier. Please understand this. Okay. So what is the system of checks and balances? You must understand it because you're studying the Constitution of India. So the Constitution, which divides power between the three organs of the government, is also following a system of checks and balances. So the three organs of the government are legislature, executive, and judiciary. Legislature, that is the parliament. Executive, that is the prime minister and the entire council of ministers, also the president and the vice president. And judiciary, that is the Supreme Court, High Court, and the entire integrated system of judiciary, the hierarchy of judiciary. Now, I think I forgot to give you this example earlier when I was talking about judicial review. So how exactly are we? Separation of power, you understood. Each organ of the government has its own area of authority and their own task. Legislature has to make laws. The laws made by the legislature are to be executed or implemented by the executive. And any violations of the laws, violations of the rights of people, or any disputes are to be settled by the judiciary. So their area of authority is demarcated, divided. So then what is the system of checks and balances? It simply means that no organ of the government will be the supreme authority. And therefore, each will have the power to keep a check on the other. For example, the legislature keeps a check on the executive, that is the prime minister and the council of ministers, or the president and the vice president. How? The legislature can impeach the president. The legislature, that is the parliament, The upper house can remove the vice president because the vice president is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Okay, so the Rajya Sabha can remove him from his position. Okay, then the parliament, the Lok Sabha, can pass a vote of no confidence against the prime minister and the council of ministers. So the executive goes out of power. All right. Then the legislature keeps a check on the judiciary. Why? Because the judiciary is appointed by the executive. The president appoints the judiciary. But who removes the judges of Supreme Court and High Court? The parliament. It is the parliament. Remember the process of removal of the judges. The parliament passes a resolution with 2/3 majority of the members present and voting in each house of the parliament. That letter is sent to the president, and then accordingly the judges of the Supreme Court or High Court are. So the legislature is keeping a check on executive. Executive and legislature keep a check on judiciary. How is the judiciary keeping a check on executive and legislature? I was talking about the provision of judicial review, that the judiciary can check the constitutional validity of any law that is passed by the legislature and any ordinance that is issued by the executive. I forgot to give you an example of judicial review. So when we say that the judiciary has the power of judicial review, one of the recent examples, when the NDA government came to power in 2014, the first tenure, okay? So one of the bills which it passed, the 99th Amendment, in fact, of the Constitution, that was in the first term itself of the NDA government. They passed the 99th Amendment Act, which said that the appointment of the judges in the Supreme Court and High Court will not be through the collegium. Remember the system of collegium I explained to you while we talked about appointment of the judges. So the NDA government said that no, it will not be through the collegium system, because the collegium system has a lot of what they called biases, okay, a lot of favoritism. And therefore, we will create a new body. And they said there will be a National Judicial Appointment Commission, NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission. Okay, and it is this NJAC which is going to appoint the judges. Now, who will be the member of the NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission? So, the ex officio chairperson will be the Chief Justice of India. All right. Then there will be 2 more judges from the Supreme Court. Okay, so far it's fine. What became very objectionable was that the Union Minister of Law and Justice will also be part of the NJAC. And 2 eminent persons from among the citizens. Now, in a 140 crore people population, how exactly are you going to identify those 2 eminent persons who are suitable to be in the commission to appoint none other than the judges of High Court and Supreme Court? So it said that the Chief Justice of India, the Prime Minister of India, and the leader of opposition, 3 of them collectively will form a committee, and they will appoint these 2 members from among the citizens of India as the members of the NJAC. Now, the question was that when this matter, when this amendment was passed, so a PIL was filed against it. Because how can the Union Minister, who is subservient to the High Court and to the Supreme Court as well, how can he be the person to decide who will be the judges of Supreme Court and High Court? Plus the 2 civilians, the 2 eminent persons. Okay. Besides this, if you look at it, if you look at the composition, so you have the Chief Justice and the 2 judges from Supreme Court. Other than that, who is there? Union Law Minister, part of executive. President of India, part of executive, Prime Minister of India, part of executive, the leader of opposition, although part of legislature, but a full-fledged politician. So that means, the NJAC will be under the control of the politicians, because the Prime Minister is a politician, Union Law Minister is a politician, leader of opposition is a politician. This was against the principle of natural justice. This was against the principle of independence of judiciary. Okay, so somebody filed a public interest litigation. I mean, they filed a writ petition saying that check the constitutional validity of this amendment, of this new law that has been passed, that the NJAC will appoint the judges. And the Supreme Court went through it and they said that no, this is not according to the provision of the Constitution, because this is going to hamper the independence of judiciary. And therefore, the 99th Amendment, which was a new law, a new act of changing the system of collegium and introducing the system of NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission. This law was struck down by the judiciary. So that's one example of judicial. So now you understand how a system of checks and balances, when the legislature, crosses the boundary, crosses the limit, the judiciary can keep the legislature under check. Similarly, the judiciary can keep the executive also under check. So coming back to the Constitution, so we decided that we will have separation of powers followed by checks and balances. I had forgotten to give you this example, therefore I took this time and explained it properly. Second thing which we had decided was that we are going to be a federation. Federation, that is division of power between the center and the states. Okay. Now, when the federation actually started working, so some of the states were already created in 1947. By the time we adopted the Constitution, the states were already in place. But then we had to redraw the states, reorganize the states. And therefore, in 1956, a commission for reorganization of states was created, and most of our states were reorganized on the basis of language spoken. Okay, so territories were redivided, states were recreated. I mean, their boundaries were redefined purely on the basis of language. So thus, different states were created, and the decisive factor was the language spoken. You must have heard about the fight between Karnataka and Maharashtra over the city of Belgaum. Why are they fighting over it? Currently, Belgaum is with Karnataka. How does Maharashtra claim stakes on Belgaum? Because a huge population of Belgaum is Marathi speaking. And because the territories were drawn, the states were drawn on the basis of languages spoken, Maharashtra says that Belgaum should be in Maharashtra. Okay, so you will come across many such fights between the two states, or fight between the center and the state over division of power, and the center, the states always complain that the center is, the states always complain that the center is trying to, keep us under its shadow. It is trying to keep a check on us, and the difference of opinion becomes more intense when the party which is ruling in the center is different than the party ruling in the state. Then the rift between the center and state becomes more aggressive. The difference of opinion are more, and very often the states complain that the center has withheld my money which I should have been getting under the grants in aid, or there is a flood or a famine or a crisis, a financial crisis, and the center is not helping me because it is ruled by the opposition party. So they have these differences of opinion. So the question arises, you cannot do away with the system of federation. Okay, we have to have a federation, and we have to have these federating units and the state government. So what is the solution? The solution is what we call cooperative federalism. We will quickly try to understand what is meant by the term cooperative federalism. As the word says, a federalism where there is better cooperation between the center and the state. Okay. Now, when we look at it, it's not something new. It is not that we have invented the solution. The framers of our constitution themselves had made provisions which reflected this cooperative federalism. For example, the division of power between the union and the state under the 7th schedule. So it's not that all the powers were given to the center and then randomly center started giving power to the states. Very systematically, powers were divided between the center and the state. Second point, the establishment of local self-governments. Okay, establishment of local self-government institutions. Please remember, the local self-government institutions are not under the central government. They are under the state. So the state can have an effective administration within the state through its local self-government. Then the Finance Commission, under Article 280, the Finance Commission which was established, it's common body and looks at the finances, the establishment of the institutions such as Niti Aayog. Okay, earlier we had what we call Planning Commission. Okay, the Planning Commission has been renamed as Niti Aayog with some changes in its duties, its working. Then we have the interstate councils under Article 263 and the zonal councils. The interstate councils, obviously, as the name is self-explanatory. And the zonal councils, the whole territory of India is divided into 5 zones: north, south, east, west, and center. And each zone has a council, and then they work in coordination with each other. Then you have the river boards, you have different tribunals, you have various sectoral councils and committees where the center and state work in coordination with each other. And all of this is part of the constitutional provision. Then we have a system of sharing powers. The center and the state government should be guided by a broader national concern. Very often the states, they are more worried about their concern is their particular unit, the federating unit which they are ruling. So they must think more from the perspective of the nation. And this problem, of rather than national concern, having only your state concern, has become more intensified with more and more regional parties becoming prominent. Okay, so for example, the division of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So the party was thriving on the agenda that a state of Telangana will be created. Okay, so you will come across such divisive politics because of the regional parties, and the more such divisive politics becomes prominent, the more national interest takes a backseat. Then a horizontal relationship between the union and state, rather than keeping it vertical, parallel division of powers, and requirement of a harmonious and cooperative relationship between the center and state. One example could be COVID, that it was a national calamity, and the center did everything possible to reach out to the states, and right from vaccines to giving funds, additional funds to them, sending medicines, etc. So all of that was done because of the center-state coordination. Then cooperative federalism, as we are practicing in India. So, you can read this, the concurrent list, union list, and state list. This we have discussed already. All this is also, in greater detail has been discussed with you. Here, according to Article 248, the Union Parliament has the exclusive right to make laws regarding any matter on the, not only in the central list, but also in the state list if the time demands it. If there is such a requirement. And under Article 131, please note, whenever there is a dispute between the center and the state, or even between two states, all such matters come directly to the Supreme. The high courts don't have an authority over such matters. They don't have a jurisdiction over such matters. And this is called the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So if the center and the state are fighting, or if two states are fighting with each other, all these matters come to the Supreme Court. The 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment, I have talked about it. In 1992, this act was passed, 73rd Act, and implemented in 1993, which has, made the institution of local self-governance for rural India very strong, the Panchayati Raj system. The Niti Aayog in 2015, the Planning Commission was renamed as Niti Aayog, okay, and it focuses, it has started taking the bottom-up approach in development planning, and it is one of the essential goals, it achieves one of the essential goals of cooperative federalism, because it works in coordination with center and the union territories, and center and the states. Then the zonal councils, as I told you, India is divided into 5 zones, and all these zones have a council, and all these councils, 5 councils, they work in coordination with each other. The GST, the Goods and Services Tax, this was implemented in 2017, and the GST came into effect. After it came into effect, all the taxes collected by the center and the state government is compiled into one single tax. And that has helped in streamlining a lot of things. It has made it more convenient for the people, and the whole idea of one nation, one market, we are heading towards it. Now, what is the importance of cooperative federalism? You can read it. It is but obvious that it will unify India better. States will get more help from the center, better allocation of resources, better allocation of funds, and it will also protect the rights of the states. In conclusion, please understand, India is a very, very diverse country, and the only way ahead for us is federalism. How strong we make India as a federal country is completely on us. We have to do away with the politics of vested interest, at the regional level. Rather than focusing on the petty regional interests, we have to think of India as a nation, as a single unit, and each one has to make their own respective contributions. When there is a good cooperation between the center and the state, the country will prosper, we will progress faster. And the cooperative federalism is the way to unite and strengthen India, and to ensure a balance of power and development throughout the country. Thank you very much. Now, with this, I have finished my bit related to the 3 units. The second part of this unit about local self-government, both urban and rural, will be done by Sukhada ma'am. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we will meet in regular intervals, and we will keep having our sessions of questions and answers. You have any queries, you have any doubts, anything you want to share, any suggestions, any examples, we can do it all when we are meeting on Zoom in form of in different groups. Okay, so I hope you have understood. I've tried my level best to discuss things at length in detail. And anytime, any questions, you can always approach me. And when we meet, my suggestion again is that in each unit, whatever your questions, please write them down. And whenever we meet, whether we meet in a regular class or we meet over Zoom, please ask those questions and get your doubts clear. All right. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.